Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome back to our Bible in a Year reading plan. I am Shanique, and I'm so excited that you're here. This year, we are diving into Genesis to Revelation in a year, and you can find a link to the printable plan that we're currently using in the description box below. So if you'd like to join us, just head on over to the description and head to our website where you can download that printable plan for free. Now, each day of that printable plan, it comes with a checkbox, so you can tick off as you read each day's reading to keep you on track. Okay. And I encourage you each day to head on over to our YouTube channel. We have the audio reading for each day. So whether you're driving into work or whether you are doing the dishes or whatever it is that you might be doing throughout your day, you can just simply tune in just to be in God's Word daily. And for each daily reading, we also offer a little bit of commentary, whether it is devotional style or based on what we come across as we study. We'll be sharing that with you guys as well. So please, I do encourage you just to come back each day and just listen in. Okay, so today we are going to be reading from Leviticus chapters 14 to 15. But before we dive into that, I wanted to give you guys a little bit of commentary, right? We do have a little bit of catching up to do based on what we have read thus far in Leviticus. So let's get started with that. Now, the Ten Commandments in Exodus convict the sinner, but the blood of the lamb in Leviticus we find frees the sinner. Isn't that interesting, right? Now, unlike the three offerings we have already discussed, so we discussed the burnt offering, the grain, and the fellowship offerings. Now, the sin offering that was found in Leviticus 4, it was not optional, it was mandatory, right? So if an Israelite wanted their sins forgiven and covered by atonement, and if they wanted to be restored to a right relationship with God, they needed to bring a sin offering and to present it before the Lord. Now, Leviticus 4, it shows us again and again that God defines sin as breaking the Ten Commandments. And this definition is found both in the Old and New Testaments. For in 1 John 3, verse 4, we learn that sin is contrary to the law of God. It is in complete opposition to God's beautiful, loving character. We also see this in Matthew 22, verse 37 to 40, and 1 John 4 and verse 8. Now, in his great mercy, God offered complete forgiveness to all who comes to him with a repentant heart. They confess their sins and make a sacrifice. So whether it was a member of the Israelite community, a leader, or a priest, a person could offer a sacrifice at any time and receive complete forgiveness in the presence of the Lord. Okay? All right. So according to Leviticus 4, a person's sins, they were transferred into the sanctuary by the shedding of blood of the sacrifice. So put simply, the blood, it both cleansed and contaminated. So it cleansed the sinner, but contaminated the sanctuary. So the priest, he'd go into the sanctuary with the blood and he would sprinkle it before the curtain that divided the holy place from the most holy place. 7 times before the anointing, the horns of the altar of incense. Now, because of this practice, while the people were being cleansed and forgiven by the blood of the sacrifice, the sanctuary is becoming more and more contaminated by the people's sin as the year went on. And that's the reason why a special day of atonement was necessary in order to cleanse the sanctuary. Okay? All right, so let's continue with our study. So let's look at the guilt offering, which deals with the sin one has committed against God and the sins we have committed against those around us. Now, the guilt offering was also called a trespass offering because the individual had trespassed in either the rights of God or the rights of those around them. So this particular sacrifice was for sins that committed either against God by violating his holy things, such as tithes and offerings, or against the people around them through theft, lying, deception, and violence, right? So this sacrifice was unique because it not only provided atonement for intentional sins, but also required that the sinner make restitution, right? And this restitution was to take place before the transgression offering was sacrificed, and the sinner was then given divine forgiveness. Okay? So what I find interesting is that for the other offerings we have discussed, birds or even flour could be used as a substitute for the bull, the goat, or the lamb used in the sacrifice. And this was so the poor could participate and enjoy the benefits of forgiveness and salvation through faith in Jesus Christ. However, For the transgression offering, the only acceptable sacrifice was a ram. And this was likely one of the most costly sacrifices, second only to the bull. And this no doubt communicated the high cost that sin demands, even when one is forgiven, right? Sin has consequences. And although forgiven through Jesus' death, it often leaves scars in us and others that may be erased only when Christ returns. Okay, and that is our commentary for today. Right now, we are going to be jumping into our daily reading. And today's reading comes from Leviticus chapter 14 to 15, and it will be read from the New American Standard Bible. Let's get started.
And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, This shall be the law of the person with leprosy on the day of his cleansing. Now he shall be brought to the priest, and the priest shall go out to a place outside of the camp. Then the priest shall look, and if the leprous infection has been healed in the person with leprosy, then the priest shall give orders to take 2 live clean birds, cedar wood, a scarlet string, and hyssop for the one who is to be cleansed. The priest shall also give orders to slaughter the one bird in an earthenware vessel over running water. As for the live bird, he shall take it together with the cedar wood, the scarlet string, and the hyssop, and shall dip them and the live bird in the blood of the bird that was slaughtered over the running water. He shall then sprinkle 7 times the one who is to be cleansed from the leprosy, and shall pronounce him clean, and shall let the live bird go free over the open field. The one to be cleansed shall then wash his clothes, and shave off all his hair, and bathe in water, and be clean. And afterward he may enter the camp, but he shall stay outside his tent for 7 days. Then it shall be on the 7th day that he shall shave off all his hair. He shall shave his head, and his beard, and his eyebrows, even all his hair. He shall then wash his clothes, and bathe his body in water, and be clean. Now on the 8th day he is to take 2 male lambs without defect, and a yearling ewe lamb without defect, and 3/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with oil as a grain offering, and 1 log of oil. And the priest who is going to pronounce him clean shall present the person to be cleansed and the offerings before the Lord at the doorway of the tent of meeting. Then the priest shall take the 1 male lamb and bring it as a guilt offering with the log of oil, and present them as a wave offering before the Lord. Next he shall slaughter the male lamb in the place where they slaughter the sin offering and the burnt offering, at the place of the sanctuary. For the guilt offering, like the sin offering, belongs to the priest. It is most holy. The priest shall then take some of the blood of the guilt offering, and the priest shall put it on the lobe of the right ear of the one to be cleansed, and on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot. The priest shall also take some of the log of oil and pour it into his left palm. The priest shall then dip his right hand finger into the oil that is in his left palm, and with his finger sprinkle some of the oil 7 times before the Lord. Of the remaining oil which is in his palm, the priest shall put some on the right earlobe of the one to be cleansed, and on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot, on the blood of the guilt offering. As for the rest of the oil that is in the priest's palm, he shall put it on the head of the one to be cleansed. So the priest shall make atonement on his behalf before the Lord. The priest shall next offer the sin offering and make atonement for the one to be cleansed from his uncleanness. Then afterward he shall slaughter the burnt offering. The priest shall offer up the burnt offering and the grain offering on the altar. So the priest shall make atonement for him, and he will be clean. But if he is poor and his means are insufficient, then he is to take 1 male lamb for a guilt offering as a wave offering to make atonement for him, and 1/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with oil as a grain offering, and a log of oil, and 2 turtle doves or 2 young doves, which are within his means. The one shall be a sin offering, and the other a burnt offering. Then on the 8th day he shall bring them for his cleansing to the priest, at the doorway of the tent of meeting, before the Lord. The priest shall take the lamb of the guilt offering and the log of oil, and the priest shall offer them as a wave offering before the Lord. Next he shall slaughter the lamb of the guilt offering, and the priest is to take some of the blood of the guilt offering and put it on the lobe of the right ear of the one to be cleansed, and on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot. The priest shall also pour some of the oil into his left palm, and with his right hand finger the priest shall sprinkle some of the oil that is in his left palm 7 times before the Lord. The priest shall then put some of the oil that is in his palm on the lobe of the right ear of the one to be cleansed, and on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot, on the place of the blood of the guilt offering. Moreover, the rest of the oil that is in the priest's palm he shall put on the head of the one to be cleansed, to make atonement on his behalf before the Lord. He shall then offer one of the turtle doves or young doves, which are within his means. He shall offer what he can afford, the one as a sin offering and the other as a burnt offering, together with the grain offering. So the priest shall make atonement before the Lord on behalf of the one to be cleansed. This is the law for him in whom there is an infection of leprosy, whose means are limited for his cleansing. Cleansing a leprous house. The Lord further spoke to Moses and to Aaron, saying, When you enter the land of Canaan, which I am giving you as a possession, and I put a spot of leprosy on a house in the land of your possession, then the one who owns the house shall come and tell the priest, saying, Something like a spot of leprosy has become visible to me in the house. The priest shall then command that they empty the house before the priest goes in to look at the spot, so that everything in the house need not become unclean, and afterward the priest shall go in to look at the house. So he shall look at the spot, and if the spot on the walls of the house has greenish or reddish depressions and appears deeper than the surface, the priest shall come out of the house to the doorway and quarantine the house for 7 days. Then the priest shall return on the 7th day and make an inspection. If the spot has indeed spread on the walls of the house, the priest shall order them to pull out the stones with the spot on them and throw them away at an unclean place outside the city. And he shall have the house scraped all around inside, and they shall dump the plaster that they scrape off at an unclean place outside the city. Then they shall take other stones and replace the discarded stones, and he shall take other plaster and replaster the house. If, however, the spot breaks out again in the house after he has pulled out the stones and scraped the house, and after it has been replastered, then the priest shall come in and make an inspection. If he sees that the spot has indeed spread in the house, it is a malignant spot in the house, it is unclean. The owner shall therefore tear down the house, its stones, its timbers, and all the plaster of the house, and he shall take them outside the city to an unclean place. Moreover, whoever goes into the house during the time that he has quarantined it becomes unclean until evening. Likewise, whoever lies down in the house shall wash his clothes, and whoever eats in the house shall wash his clothes. If, on the other hand, the priest comes in and makes an inspection and the spot has not indeed spread in the house after the house has been replastered, then the priest shall pronounce the house clean because the spot has not reappeared. To cleanse the house then, he shall take 2 birds, cedar wood, a scarlet string, and hyssop, and he shall slaughter the one bird in an earthenware vessel over running water. Then he shall take the cedar wood, the hyssop, and the scarlet string, with the live bird, and dip them in the blood of the slaughtered bird as well as in the running water, and sprinkle the house 7 times. So he shall cleanse the house with the blood of the bird and with the running water, along with the live bird, the cedar wood, the hyssop, and the scarlet string. However, he shall let the live bird go free outside the city into the open field. So he shall make atonement for the house, and it will be clean. This is the law for any spot of leprosy, even for a scale, and for the leprous garment or house, and for a swelling, for a scab, and for a bright spot, to teach when they are unclean and when they are clean. This is the law of leprosy. Leviticus 15. Cleansing unhealthiness. The Lord also spoke to Moses and to Aaron, saying, Speak to the sons of Israel, and say to them, When any man has a discharge from his body, his discharge is unclean. This, moreover, shall be his uncleanness in his discharge. It is his uncleanness whether his body allows its discharge to flow or whether his body obstructs its discharge. Every bed on which the man with the discharge lies becomes unclean, and everything on which he sits becomes unclean. Anyone, moreover, who touches his bed shall wash his clothes and bathe in water and be unclean until evening. And whoever sits on the thing on which the man with the discharge has been sitting shall wash his clothes and bathe in water and be unclean until evening. Also, whoever touches the man with the discharge shall wash his clothes and bathe in water and be unclean until evening. Or, if the man with the discharge spits on one who is clean, he too shall wash his clothes and bathe in water and be unclean until evening. Every saddle on which the man with the discharge rides becomes unclean. Whoever then touches any of the things which were under him shall be unclean until evening, and the one who carries them shall wash his clothes and bathe in water and be unclean until evening. Likewise, whomever the man with the discharge touches without having rinsed his hands in water shall wash his clothes and bathe in water and be unclean until evening. However, an earthenware vessel which the man with the discharge touches shall be broken, and every wooden vessel shall be rinsed in water. Now when the man with the discharge becomes cleansed from his discharge, then he shall count off for himself 7 days for his cleansing. He shall then wash his clothes and bathe his body in running water, and will become clean. Then on the 8th day he shall take for himself 2 turtle doves or 2 young doves, and come before the Lord to the doorway of the tent of meeting, and give them to the priest. And the priest shall offer them, one as a sin offering and the other as a burnt offering. So the priest shall make atonement on his behalf before the Lord because of his discharge. Now if a man has a seminal emission, he shall bathe all his body in water and be unclean until evening. As for any garment or any leather on which there is a seminal emission, it shall be washed with water and be unclean until evening. If a man sleeps with a woman so that there is a seminal emission, they shall both bathe in water and be unclean until evening. When a woman has a discharge, if her discharge in her body is blood, she shall continue in her menstrual impurity for 7 days, and whoever touches her shall be unclean until evening. Everything also on which she lies during her menstrual impurity shall be unclean, and everything on which she sits shall be unclean. Anyone who touches her bed shall wash his clothes and bathe in water and be unclean until evening. Whoever touches any object on which she sits shall wash his clothes and bathe in water and be unclean until evening. Whether it be on the bed or on the thing on which she is sitting, when he touches it, he shall be unclean until evening. If a man actually sleeps with her so that her menstrual impurity is on him, he shall be unclean 7 days, and every bed on which he lies shall be unclean. Now if a woman has a discharge of her blood for many days, not at the period of her menstrual impurity, or if she has a discharge beyond that period, for all the days of her impure discharge she shall continue as though in her menstrual impurity. She is unclean. Any bed on which she lies all the days of her discharge shall be to her like her bed at menstruation, and every object on which she sits shall be unclean, like her uncleanness at that time. Likewise, whoever touches them shall be unclean, and shall wash his clothes and bathe in water, and be unclean until evening. When she becomes clean from her discharge, she shall count off for herself 7 days, and afterward she will be clean. Then on the 8th day she shall take for herself 2 turtle doves or 2 young doves, and bring them to the priest, to the doorway of the tent of meeting. And the priest shall offer the one as a sin offering, and the other as a burnt offering. So the priest shall make atonement on her behalf before the Lord because of her impure discharge. And so you shall keep the sons of Israel separated from their uncleanness, so that they will not die in their uncleanness by their defiling my tabernacle that is among them. This is the law for the one with a discharge, and for the man who has a seminal emission so that he is unclean by it, and for the woman who is ill because of menstrual impurity, and for the one who has a discharge, whether a male or a female, or a man who sleeps with an unclean woman.